Today we're going to talk about how God uses us to bring restoration to others. And I have with me somebody who's influenced me in this realm of my life more than any other human being on the earth, and that is my tremendous friend from Black Hawk Ministries, Senior Pastor, the Bishop, Kelly Bird.
Pastor Cruz.
Kelly, thank you so much for being here today.
It's good to be here, man.
I think what's really important for everybody to understand about how they can be used by God to restore others is that they first need to be restored. So can you tell your story of restoration?
The whole story?
Well, whatever you think.
The abridged version?
Yeah.
Yeah. Grew up only child in a Christian home, as they would say. Really amazingly gifted dad who was in ministry from the day I can remember. He and my mom and me, a number of different places across the country, mostly out in the West, California, Southern and Central. But most of my memories of childhood were of my dad. And watching him and listening to him preach, watching him lead, watching God use him to do amazing, miraculous things in the church and in the lives of people. Thoroughly and completely idolized him. The old saying, worship the ground he walked on, really, really true. Knew about God growing up, obviously, growing up with my dad, growing up in the church. Knew about God, knew about the gospel. Believed it all, I think, to some degree, but as the years kind of progressed, it became pretty clear that what I believed more than anything was I believed in my dad and his abilities, his giftedness. When I was 17, I think around 13, 14, I thought something maybe was a little bit askew with my mom and dad. Never could put anything together. 17 years of age on an August summer afternoon, came home from my landscaping job. Football was about to start. I remember that. Came home one day, my dad was there. In the recliner in the living room, weeping. And my mom was out of town, thought maybe something had happened to her. Come to find out, that day he had been removed from his position at the church. It had come to the attention of the elders and those involved there that he had been involved in a 17-year-long affair. And I was 17. And I think the moment he told me that day, it took him a while to get it out, but the moment he told me about that and the moment I did the math on 17 years in my life, probably a little bit more than I could handle.
And it's just the two of you there in that moment?
It was just the two of us, yeah.
Wow, that's heavy.
It was hard. Yeah, it was hard for him, obviously. And I just immediately, at 17, had no capacity to really process that or deal with that. Wasn't mature enough by any stretch, and just became immediately angry, terribly confused, and really just decided over those next couple of days to go the other direction as fast as I could.
So you maybe started looking for a sand heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now you're at a pivotal point in your life because you could have been a Division I swimmer, quarterback, basketball player, anything else?
I don't know.
And you decided obviously to play basketball.
Yeah. Partier, don't forget that.
Oh, and
could have been a D1 partier.
A D1 partier.
Yeah.
So you're at a pivotal point in your life, and you choose Division I basketball. Where do you go?
Yeah, that was my senior year of high school. Went to San Francisco State right out of high school to play basketball. Just kind of got lost in all that, morally, personally. Don't even know if I would say spiritually, but on that front, just chucked it all. Mad at my dad. But you know how that is. Really, ultimately, I think mad at God, confused at what had been allowed to take place, confused about what it all meant. So morally, personally, just went as fast and as far away from everything they had taught me. Went to play basketball at San Francisco. After a year, found myself in a lot of trouble, personally, morally. Had some friends that went to Fresno State out of high school, talked with them, went and decided to try and walk on at Fresno State, did, That was my redshirt year. It was a great year basketball-wise. Found my stride, began to kind of get some things back together, but began to drink a lot. I think by the time that 1 year at Fresno State was over, I was probably borderline alcoholic.
You won an NIT championship.
That year we won the NIT championship.
You played at Madison Square Garden?
At Madison Square Garden.
And you're borderline as a Division I athlete winning an NIT championship and alcoholic.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of hurt I didn't know what to do with. Just a lot of pain and disappointment. I had no idea where to go with that stuff, so I just got promiscuous and tried to cover it all up. And it was at the end of that year at Fresno State when my mom and dad had moved in an effort to maybe salvage their marriage, which that didn't end up working out. But at that time, in an effort to salvage the marriage, they moved to LA. My dad had gone to school with and had been friends. We had been friends my whole life with Dr. John MacArthur.
Yep.
Johnny Mac had been a huge influence in my dad's life, and he and Patricia and their family had been a big part of our lives. And so all of a sudden, home wasn't the Bay Area anymore, it was LA. And I was on my way to Mazatlan for spring break with about 10 guys. And it wasn't gonna be a missions trip, if you get what I'm saying there. And my mom calls and asks me if I wanna come home. She hadn't done that very often. I could tell she was down. She said, "Would you come home?" I said, "Yeah, okay, you know, pre-9/11, no big deal to just give your ticket to somebody else," and gave it to another guy in the fraternity, and I went home. And it was that week at home, spring 1982, when I went with my mom to Grace Community Church, began to listen for the first time in a few years to the Word of God being taught and proclaimed in a really relevant, powerful way. Met some guys who were my age. Matt MacArthur, John's son, really kind of befriended me, introduced me to his buddies. He was playing baseball at the time at UCLA, and went to some Bible studies and went out and had some fun that didn't involve sex and booze. And all of a sudden, God began to do what you and I have talked about before, that efficacious thing where he starts drawing people to himself. And it's beyond anything, you know, that you would have ever imagined. And all of a sudden, I'm reading stuff I didn't used to read and listening to things I didn't used to listen to. And that week was pivotal. Went back to Fresno State, completely changed. Not saved, not to that point yet, but really God began to do a work in me, which led me to leave Fresno State after that year and enroll at the Master's College, which John was the president of.
John had been in a quartet with your dad, right?
John and my dad sang in a quartet when they were at Bob Jones University together. It was amazing. And John was the president of the college. They gave me a basketball scholarship. No kidding. It was fun. It was different than what I had been used to, but great guys and a great atmosphere.
Did you just tear it up?
We had a good team.
I mean, you personally, 6'7" D1 guy coming to Masters College.
I did pretty well. Set some school records, won a few games. But it was a completely different environment. I mean, I went from the fraternity house at Fresno State to Hotchkiss Hall at the Master's College, where lights were out at 11, and you know, you had chapel 3 times a week, and I needed that, actually. It was good for me to have some of those parameters brought back in. So it was when I went to the Master's College, was honest when I enrolled. You know, they ask you if when you accepted Christ, and really told them I hadn't. I didn't feel like at that point in time I really had anything personal or real with the Lord. And 2-3 weeks later, September '83, sitting in the back row at Grace Community Church, right-hand side, John teaching through Romans 7, and Paul lamenting about the things he does that he doesn't want to do, and the things he wants to do that he doesn't do. And there's that great proclamation there at the end, "O wretched man that I am, who will save me from this body of death?" And I don't know if there was anybody in the room who understood at that point that body of death and the emptiness that sin brings and the futility that disobedience brings about. And the Spirit of God and the Word of God just brought me to my knees. And that night, September '83, I fully, completely surrendered my heart and life to Christ.
That's so powerful. It sounds to me like I'm hearing that as a kid, being in the church environment where your dad's all that you're probably wrestling with a little bit of a stone heart. You know, you just keep the rules and everything works out for you.
Yeah.
And then you walk in that day and you realize the rules didn't stop everything from happening, and there's other forces at work, and so you go to the sand heart. And then that night at Grace Community Church,
Yeah.
it's the beginning of a clay heart, a whole different direction.
Absolutely.
Would you say that you were on a search for significance, to be significant relationally, to be significant in your life? It just, when you talk about how the relationships that you had in the sand-hearted days and how you were still functioning at a very high athletic level, and then there's this transition where you see friendships now where you go out and you're not going to drink and you're not, going to go have sex with anybody.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you realize that there was relational significance in a different way, and it flowed from God's love, from God's grace, and through
Yeah.
the Word of God, people of God, Spirit of God, as you say.
Yeah.
Would you say that there's some of that going on there?
Absolutely.
For you?
Yeah. For all those years, significance was going to be found in what I achieved, what I accomplished, or who I ended up with. I think that's how it works with a sand heart.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and that's the lie, that the enemy brings to that whole scenario. So for years, that was the pursuit. For years, that was what I was about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's that way for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in an environment where I watched my dad and what he did and how he spoke and what people said about him, how popular he was, how successful the ministry was. All of that I just watched and realized that there was a path that you walked where you did your very best to have people think highly of you and be successful and do well. And I think that was embedded deeply in me.
Well, you fully surrendered your life to Christ, but you had a caveat.
Oh, I did.
That you would.
With God?
Yes.
Yeah, that night, I remember tears dropping off my cheeks, genuine as the day is long. And I said, I'll do this. I'll fully surrender my entire life to you. And I will do that willingly, but I will, just so we're clear, I think I remember literally looking up, just so we're clear, I'll never be in ministry. Don't ever ask me to do that. Don't ever ask me to walk that road. I'm yours. I will go wherever you want me to go, do whatever you want me to do, except that.
What changed that?
A buddy of mine, Russ Moore, who was at that time the junior high pastor at Grace Community, who really, when I came to faith, really was the one man that God used to disciple me and invest in me. Became my friend, became a father figure in I think many respects. He and Heidi and their family took me in, really loved me. And Russ asked me, having met with me for a number of months and as he watched me growing in my faith, he asked me one day as we met, would you be willing to help me out with junior high ministry? How about you lead a small group of junior high, 7th grade boys? And he tricked me, because I didn't equate leading a small group of 7th grade boys with the ministry. You know what I mean?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And I thought, gosh, I said, what do I got to do? He said, you meet with them and just talk to them about the Bible and play ball with them and go to their games and, just love on them. So I thought, well, I can do that. So I did. And it was just God's sense of humor, I think. First night we met, I had prepared a little talk on Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Daniel 3. I maybe spent an hour thinking about it. I had no idea how to do it, but walked into Danny Stepper's bedroom. 5 guys sitting in beanbag chairs. Kind of dates me a little bit. And they listened. They listened to every word. I had never felt anything like it. They listened to everything I said about Daniel 3 and those 3 Hebrew boys. And could have heard a pin drop. And then they asked me questions. And I had some answers. And we prayed. And we got done and they said, wow, that was cool. And I drove home in tears.
I know that feeling.
Couldn't
I know
believe
exactly what you're talking about.
couldn't believe how much fun it was, how meaningful it was to do that. And I still didn't put it together that night that he had tricked me. But that led to about a year of involvement with Russ in that junior high ministry. And before you know it, the gifts God had given me and the abilities that he had instilled in me, and the spiritual capacities that came when I surrendered my heart and life to Christ began to show and bear fruit. So all of a sudden it was undeniable. Tried to do some other things, tried to do physical therapy, tried to do broadcasting, tried everything I could to just take the gifts and do something a little different, but no denying it.
Wow. You met Kebra there, pursued her,
Yep.
won her over. You got married, you had Russell.
Yep.
Named him after Russell Moore.
Absolutely.
And you and Russell were active as pastors in a local church.
When I had learned some very important lessons, actually hired me to work with them again at the church.
Got it.
At Foothill Baptist Church in Sylmar, California. Great stories there. Kind of near Pasadena.
Awesome.
But yeah, and then he came to Fort Wayne. He decided to go full-time. He was doing master's college and the church kind of together, and he wanted to try the church thing full-time. And Black Hawk Baptist Church at that time found him through some interesting connections, and they moved from LA to Fort Wayne.
And then asked you to come with him.
And then we came
a little bit
and
later.
joined him 3 or 4 years later.
And then you became senior pastor in what year?
99.
99. And 99, coincidentally, is when God moved me out of Cruise International and popped eBay out of the sky, and I had enrolled in seminary.
Yep.
And Bill Hybels and Willow Creek have been very influential in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm working out one Sunday morning, and I see this guy on TV who looks a lot like Oliver North.
That's right.
And I said, hey, he's talking a little bit like Willow Creek's talking. That's pretty cool. I love this. He's being relevant to the culture. And then at a church leadership conference at Willow Creek, I saw you, and it took me a while for it to click, because you're 6'7", and you can't tell that on TV, if you're not standing by somebody else. And it registered with me who you were. I went up and introduced myself to you that night before you were going to talk to the whole church.
Yep.
And I even remember what you said that night about excellence. And then out of 4,000 people the next day, you and I end up sitting beside each other, and we talk for about a half hour and find out how our stories paralleled in such a
Very much so. Yep.
And you tracked me down, and we met for about a year and a half.
I have in my desk
Yeah.
today, the pink note sheet. You know how the administrative assistant leaves you the pink little note sheet that somebody called? I have in my desk today the pink note sheet when I asked Lori to find the number for County Line Church of God that I was trying to track you down, and I have it in my desk today, County Line Church of God. Here's Mitch's number.
Oh my goodness.
And it's still sitting in my desk today.
Almost makes me want to cry. Looking back now, how do you see God's work in you, that He redeemed you, He restored you, you're walking Restoration Road, and your ultimate value, it seems to me, what you would think too, is that you allow yourself to be used by Him to bring restoration to others. How do you see that today, looking in the rearview mirror of your life on what He did, and is this the purpose for which you were made, and what you've seen as the ripple effect of all that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what I've learned, I think I'm still learning. I think what I learned through everything I went through was that I had been made in the image of God, designed by God to live in a really rich, full relationship with Him. The relationship with my dad, like the relationship you have with yours and anybody has with their dad, was an enormous part of what was supposed to kind of help that picture of me and God flourish, but it didn't. And I learned as I've gone through this that whether it's my dad and I's relationship, or you and your dads, or somebody else and their mom, or somebody else and a brother or sister, everybody gets disconnected, there is the lack of restoration. There is a severing of relationship that impacts almost everybody's life. And relationship is the one thing we were made for. And so when I think about what I learned, going through what I went through with my dad, I see how God prepared me for a life of helping people be restored. He restored me in a powerful way with my dad. And in the process, helped me understand better the kind of relationship God wanted to have with me. And I think when I got that figured out, it really, really helped me. And now today, it just doesn't matter who I meet. It doesn't matter where I go. People are in desperate need, you know that, of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
People need to be restored to the one that made them,
Yes.
to the one that created them. And there's all kinds of things that get in the way. And my experience didn't prepare me to deal with everything that gets in the way for everybody. But as I've lived the last 30 years, I've realized what he brought me through really did prepare me to help with a lot of people.
Absolutely. And for someone who's watching, you held on for a little bit to things against your dad.
Yeah, you know, my dad ended up leaving my mom and I. It was a couple months after I got married in '87 that he finally just kind of called it quits, and he left, moved to Arizona, and within a few months actually married the woman who he had had the affair with. And that was hard for me. And I brought all kinds of, analysis to that and all kinds of opinions, and was very critical of him divorcing my mom, very critical of him deciding to remarry her. And I just became, at some point in there, just judge and jury. And he was guilty, and it was wrong, and he was going to pay for that. That was my mindset. I may not have said it that way, but he was going to pay for what he had done to my mom and to me and now my new wife. And so I just started to make him pay.
A little bit of stone left in the heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. And when, we got pregnant with our first child, Russell T., absolutely allowed him to be involved in not a single part of that whole process. When he wanted to come and visit during the pregnancy, I said no. When he asked if he could come when Russell was born, I said no. When I graduated from seminary, he wanted to come and support me in that, and I said no. There was just a real hard heart and a real judgmental spirit. All the while, like you said, I'm in ministry, I'm teaching people about forgiveness, I'm teaching people about the grace of God, I'm teaching people about God's sovereignty and His ability to move in situations we're unaware of or incapable of dealing with. So it really, sad to say, Mitch, it took it was almost a decade. I mean, it was literally 7 to 10 years of just real animosity. And God, in His time and place, broke me of that. We were here in Indiana. I mean, we had moved
You and
out
I were
here.
walking through something.
Yeah, we were had another little girl now, Wesley. I think Madison was on her way. And I just, at some point, God allowed me to realize and see that all the things I'd been keeping Him from, that wasn't my call. That God would rather me treat my dad in a way, where Ephesians 6 says, I'm to honor my father and my mother. I'm to treat them with respect. And whatever he did wrong or whatever hadn't been made right, I could spend my whole life being angry about that, and in the process miss out on something else God had designed, which was a relationship between a son and a father. So I just was terribly sorry for what I had done, sought my dad's forgiveness. He granted it. And from that day on to this day, we just have been growing a great, new, different, I'll admit, kind of unique, but a new relationship that I'm really, really thankful for. Last week, I'm pulling out of our driveway. And our driveway, you got to kind of back out around the basketball pole and then kind of straighten yourself out. And I'm whipping out, I'm on my way somewhere. And I just happen to see, out of the corner of my eye, I see Jake, my 10-year-old son. He's just flying out of the front door. And I didn't know what had happened. I thought something was wrong. I'm in a hurry, so I'm a little bit short with him. And I hit the brakes and roll the window down and say, "What's up?" And he just jumps up on the sideboard of the Yukon and just sticks his head in and hugs me. and says, I just wanted to give you a hug, Dad, I love you. And I think that's that, and he does it to me all the time, you know, and my girls do that to me all the time. There's something, though, very unique about a son's desire to have his dad's time, attention, affection, investment, and when that doesn't happen the way God designed it, something gets really, something gets messy, something gets really screwed up inside, and it's a powerful reminder, I think, for me, of the kind of relationship he wants me to have with my boys, and I'm trying my best.
And what he wants to have with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got a couple minutes left. Could you just tell somebody who's watching, who's maybe on the fence, not sure, they're wounded, they're hurt, just like you and I have been, not sure what to do on the God thing, and what could be ahead of them on the other side? What would you say to them?
Yeah, you know, I would say without hesitation, that I've lived enough life. I know I'm a pastor. I know I spend a lot of my time in what you might consider, you know, a religious world or circles, but I've lived where many of you live. I've pursued things that I thought were going to bring satisfaction and didn't. I understand the futility and the emptiness of immorality. I understand the futility and emptiness of harboring a grudge. I understand bitterness. I know what it's like to live where maybe you're living. And I can only sit here today and just invite you and maybe even plead with you to give the satisfaction and the fulfillment and the cleansing and the hope that Jesus Christ can bring. I can sit here and just plead with you to give that an opportunity, to give him a chance. He is the one that made you. He is the one that designed you. The distance that you experience is a distance in your relationship with him. And so I would just encourage you, as Mitch has written about in his book, to be restored to the one who loves you and longs to be in relationship with you, a relationship that will, without a shadow of a doubt, change and alter your life forever.
Kelly, thank you so much for that. Thank you for your investment in my life and the investment in the restoration of so many others. People can find out more about the church at blackhawkministries.org. Very cool website. And thank you so much for everything that you've done.
Thanks, man. Love you.
Is there anything in your life that you would like restored to new? We invite you to journey through Restoration Road. Whether a group or individual, it's ideal with a study guide and DVD to walk you on your own Restoration Road journey. Just visit therestorationroad.com.